the only living place of worship in Vijayanagar, has long been a magnet for pilgrims. At its heart is Pampa Shrine, the oldest part of the temple which slowly grew up around it. At the beginning of the 14th century, a new force appeared in this dry, rocky upland. A local chief, Kampila Deva, was threatened by the powerful armies of the Delhi Sultan, by whom he was eventually killed. The founding of Vijayanagar is shrouded in mystery, but the Sangama brothers, warriors who probably served with Kampila Deva, are said to have established the fortress city in 1336. Its strategic location was excellent. Facing the hostile sultanates to the north, the city was surrounded with difficult terrain that made it highly defensible. Founding temples and making donations to Hindu deities were part of a ruler's obligations. On a hill near the river, Kampila Deva had erected a finely finished temple to Shiva. Nearby, out of the obdurate rock, 2 more temples to Shiva were built by the Sangama brothers. The hill overlooks the ancient shrine of Shiva Virupaksha, refurbished and expanded by the Sangamas. They so valued this deity that often their charters were signed in his name and not their own. The god Virupaksha remained popular throughout the history of the city, serving as the protective deity of the royal family. Many rulers contributed to the shrine's expansion with ever more elaborate additions. The most magnificent is the mandapa or hall in front with its painted ceiling. It was added by Krishna Deva Raya, the 16th century king under whom Vijayanagar art and splendor reached its height. Here, replicas of original bronzes portray him with 2 of his wives. As the city expanded, more temples arose in the sacred area along the Tungabhadra, as well as in the palace zone south of the river. Early in the 15th century, the ruler Devaraya I erected a private chapel close to his residence. This temple was dedicated to Rama, hero of the Ramayana and a popular incarnation of Vishnu. Rama is believed to have visited this region during his search for his beloved wife Sita, who had been stolen by the demon Ravana. It was here he met Hanuman, the magically gifted monkey general who was to help him destroy Ravana and set Sita free. The Ramayana describes how Rama and his brother arrived in Kishkinda, the monkey kingdom, and met the monkey king and his brave general. It is believed that these events took place in the region along the Tungabhadra river. Today, pilgrims make the rounds of the sacred sites. The river winds below Matanga Hill, home of the sage who protected the Monkey King. The sage Matanga is also believed to be the father of Pampa. At the foot of the hill, a temple marks the site where Rama's brother Lakshmana crowned the Monkey King. Pilgrims visit the cave in which the Monkey King hid the jewels that Sita dropped when she was being carried away by the demon Ravana in his aerial chariot. Before the cave is a pool in which Sita is supposed to have bathed. On the other side of the river, pilgrims climb Anjanadri Hill, where Hanuman was born. Another hill at the eastern end of Vijayanagar is where Rama waited, a guest of the kingdom, while Hanuman went to Lanka in search of Sita. Hanuman appears in frequent carvings on the boulders that are scattered everywhere. The Ramayana lent its sacredness to the king's city, endowing it with potency. And so, here at the royal center of Vijayanagar, where all the city's roads converge, is the king's personal temple to Rama, where king and God meet. The king identified himself with Rama, the ideal Hindu ruler, and his capital with Rama's city, Ayodhya. The layout of Indian royal cities is meant to portray the essential order of the universe and emphasize the king's divinely ordained right to rule. John Fritz, an archaeologist and anthropologist, is one of the leaders of an international team of people documenting and studying Vijayanagar.
This sculpture of Vishnu in his man-lion form was commissioned by Krishna Devaraya in 1528. It once had a sculpture of Lakshmi sitting on its knee. The bits and pieces of this smashed sculpture are lying around the surface of this area. And if we look, we may be able to reassemble this sculpture. It's amazing what kind of archaeology can be done simply by looking at the surface of a site like this. Krishna Devaraya built this temple dedicated to Krishna, another aspect of Vishnu, after a great military campaign in the east of India. The rearing beasts on the columns of this porch are a hallmark of the Vijayanagara style. These beautifully carved columns aside, the temple was built rather in a hurry to house an image of Krishna taken in his victorious campaign. This image is now in a museum. The architectural triumph of Vijayanagara is the temple complex dedicated to Vittala, another aspect of the god Vishnu. The temple was already 2 or 3 generations old when Krishna Devaraya ordered its expansion and these column halls were added. This hall may have been intended for dance or theatrical performances. Krishna Devaraya was a highly cultivated man who is credited with a large number of literary works, including even a 5-act Sanskrit drama. The glory of this temple complex is this open porch, added by a military commander of the last Vijayanagara emperor, Sadashivaraya. These rearing beasts and the multiple colonnettes are hewn out of a single granite block. This basement is carved with processional figures and the incarnations of Vishnu.
The exquisitely worked stone shrine is dedicated to Garuda, Vishnu's eagle mount. It looks just like a chariot that is used to bear the image of the god. On festival days, a real chariot would have been pulled down the long ceremonial street that leads away from the Vittala temple.
A 16th century Portuguese visitor, Domingo Paes, left us a description that sounds very similar to a modern festival.
Whenever the festival of any of these temples occurs, they drag along certain triumphal cars which run on wheels, and with it go dancing girls and other women with music to the temple, conducting the idol along the said street with much pomp.
The era of Vijayanagar was one of almost constant warfare, and the walled city was several times besieged by neighboring sultans, but was never taken. Defense was always a priority. Entrance to the city was gained via gates often protected by barbican walls that required several turns before allowing access, a security feature designed to slow down an enemy onslaught. But Vijayanagar was not merely an embattled city. It was a meeting place for people of many races and religious beliefs. Jain temples attest to that community's presence. Among the city's devout defenders were Muslim soldiers who had been recruited by the Vijayanagar rulers for their knowledge of horses and guns. Together with Arab traders, they built a thriving Islamic community, erecting mosques and tombs. Islamic influence may be seen in certain buildings of the city, such as a watchtower with pointed arches, and an elegant building which may have been used by the king for private audiences. With its cusped arches, it is a true hybrid of local and imported Sultanate features. This handsome pavilion contained a central bathing tank supplied by a water chute. Though popularly known as the Queen's Bath, it is more likely to have been used by the king and his nobles, perhaps accompanied by their courtesans. Perhaps the most unusual building in Vijayanagar is the domed elephant stable. The king and his court may have watched parades from an adjacent building while musicians played in a pavilion on the roof of the elephant stables. Elephants were of great importance in the kingdom. They were ridden in battle and in royal processions. The kingdom of Vijayanagar was prey to intrigues, assassinations, and coups. 3 different families ruled in the 2 centuries of Vijayanagar's power. Each group of rulers added to the sprawling palace complex. This foundation once supported a hall of public audience. Each of these stones was the base for a wooden column. Today we see the palace complex as a sea of stone, but try to imagine it filled with carved wooden pillars, elaborate plaster work, and hung with brilliantly colored silks. Wall paintings capture some of the era's elegant intensity. These paintings from Virupaksha Temple south of Vijayanagar remind us that a richly sensual life inhabited the austere stone plazas and halls. The king's public life was highly ritualized. By far the most ostentatious of royal celebrations was the Mahanavami, or 9 nights festival associated with this platform. After a ritual bath, the king was seated on a jeweled throne on the platform to watch plays, dances, wrestling, and fireworks. The extraordinary parades were described by Domingo Paez.
There enter many horses covered with trappings and cloths of very fine stuff. Then you see female doorkeepers with canes in their hands and whips on their shoulders. And then many eunuchs and women playing trumpets and drums and pipes and viols and close to them women who have very rich and fine silk cloths. And then come the elephants.
The king and his court were in Vijayanagar only for the rainy season, which concluded with this festival. During Mahanavami, the king reenacted Rama's actions before setting off to conquer Ravana. He evoked the blessings of Durga. Then, as the weather cleared, he set forth to war or to tour his kingdom. In Vijayanagar, many rituals involved bathing tanks. This tank is unusual for being built of schist, a stone which had to be imported from over 100 kilometers. When local archaeologists uncovered the tank recently, they noted that each block was numbered, suggesting that the tank may have been disassembled in a distant location and moved here. In this dry region, water was of central importance, and the city was dependent upon an ingenious water system, including rainwater storage tanks, water channels, aqueducts, and irrigation canals. Water was diverted from the Tungabhadra river to supply the city's population. Canals irrigated the farmland, which supplemented the quantity of imports on which the city depended.
Near the end of the reign of the Vijayanagara emperors, a chief minister commissioned a temple in honor of Vishnu Venkateshwara. The grandiose proportions of this temple attest to the great aspirations of the ruler just a few decades before the fall of the empire. But we get a much better view of this temple from up there. Seen from the hill above, this last great Vijayanagara temple looks like a fortress within a fortified city, an apt image for the embattled city near the end of its political life.
In 1565, Vijayanagar's luck ran out. Its enemies, long held at bay by shifting alliances, plots and counterplots, united at last to crush Vijayanagar's army and kill its regent. The city was ruthlessly sacked and burnt. The pillaging is said to have taken months to complete. The king's descendants moved away, the city was abandoned, and as time went on, all remains of the empire faded. Today, Achyuta Raya, a descendant of the royal family, still lives in a village across the river from Vijayanagar. He works as a lawyer in town, but returns home on weekends.
Shall we say some customs which we are still existing? See, whenever I go to Sri Virupaksha Temple, they have to open main northern entrance for me. And even during car festival, I had to go, I had to invite Swamiji, who comes and sits in chariot. And I had to order the people to drag the chariot. And during Dasra, people, they come and they wish me. Almost all the villagers, including Mahamadas, they come there, wish me, and then they go. During that time, I'll keep some of the antiques outside and I do puja.
Achyuta Raya's modest family home is all that is left of the Vijayanagar ruler's grandeur. The vast riches that poured into Vijayanagar have vanished. The city was founded not on trade routes, but on Indian ideals of kingship and empire. When the empire collapsed, the wealth and power moved elsewhere, and Vijayanagar was left to its ghosts and its dreams. All that remains is 25 square kilometers of stone ruins and some 4 centuries of memory. Monuments are usually created by the powerful and rich, people who have the world at their disposal. But 2000 years ago, on a quiet hill in central India, a masterpiece was erected. And those who made it possible were ordinary men and women, farmers, merchants, housewives, tradespeople, monks and nuns. This marvel of carving and construction lives as a reflection of Buddhism. The great stupa at Sanchi was produced at a unique time in Indian history by everyday people inspired by the teachings of man who lived 400 years before the birth of Christ. For the Buddha, enlightenment dawned after prolonged meditation on the nature of life. The Buddha taught that suffering could be eradicated through the middle path. The middle path is neither the practice of extreme austerities nor the indulgence of the senses. The Buddha explained to Sona.
Formerly, when you were a householder, were you skilled at playing the lute?
Yes, Lord.
When the strings were neither too taut nor too slack, but were keyed to an even pitch, was your lute tuneful and fit for playing?
Yes, Lord.
Even so, Sona, is the Dhamma that I propose.
The Buddha said,
Go forth, O bhikkhus, on your wanderings, for the good of many, for the happiness of the many, out of compassion for this world. Let not two of you go the same way.
So it was that sometime around 400 BC, Buddhist monks began to wander along the trade routes that linked the ancient cities and towns. As they traveled, they converted the merchants and traders they met, and the faith grew. Monks renounced all property and begged for their daily food, a way of life not too uncomfortable in the warm Indian climate. But what were homeless, wandering monks to do during the monsoon season? When monsoon rains flooded the countryside and the swollen rivers and streams made travel impossible, the monks were permitted a 3-month retreat. Communal residences used for these retreats were the beginnings of permanent monasteries.
Buddham saranam gacchami Dhammam saranam gacchami Sangham.
The faithful take refuge in the 3 jewels: the Buddha himself, his teachings, and the community of monks. They chant this formulation: I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dhamma, I take refuge in the Sangha. The Buddha is said to have died around the age of 80. He directed that his remains were to be placed in a stupa, or burial mound. Its rounded form is derived from ancient ancestral burial mounds that may not have looked very different from this smaller stupa at Sanchi. The Buddha's relics rest at the core of the great stupa's solid mound. In this more elaborate stupa, the spot is marked by a mast topped by 3 parasols denoting royalty. The stupa is infused with the living presence of the Buddha and is approached by Buddhist pilgrims with the adoration, awe, and deep love they feel for the Master himself. But how did the stupa come to be here? An answer lies in the geography and politics of India at the time it was built. Some 6 kilometers from Sanchi stands the town of Vidisha, capital of the ancient region of Malwa. Located where the river Betwa joins the Base River, Vidisha was also strategically placed on the land route that connected royal Pataliputra, the modern Patna, with the ports of the west coast and with the cities of the north. At the start of the 3rd century BC, Vidisha was a bustling center of activity with many Buddhist residents. This was the era of the great Buddhist ruler Ashoka, who built hospitals, roads lined with trees, rest houses and wells so that his realm might thrive. Ashoka's fame today is largely due to his practice of placing inscriptions or edicts on pillars like the one at Sarnath.